Hey everybody, I know everybody may not have time to listen to the whole interview, but please don't just go off of one half. I try to give things in an objective viewpoint, and then also give a Christian world viewpoint. So please don't just listen to the objective viewpoint and then think that's what you should go on. Please skip to the time link in the description where I tell you, okay, here's the Christian perspective, because they actually are in quite the contrast this time around. But without further ado, go ahead and enjoy the video. Hello everybody, this is Whole Views. My name is Corey, and I'm here to review The Witcher Season 1. Alright, so getting into it, I just gotta come straight out of the gate and say that The Witcher is a great series. I want to say it's one of the best ones that I've seen on Netflix in a while, but I gotta kind of give you a few caveats about myself and things that I've been trying on Netflix and the way that I perceive shows in general. I'm not a big fantasy guy. I tend to not watch anything with magic and witches and mages and elves and dragons. I'm just not into that stuff. So that's full disclosure on my part. I've never seen Lord of the Rings. I've never seen the Hobbit films. Never seen an episode of Game of Thrones. So I have some thoughts in my mind about fantasy and fantasy tropes. Some of the things that came up here that I didn't necessarily like, but I will say that even though that genre of films, fantasy films, are not my favorite, or fantasy television shows, they're not my favorite shows. I still did have a pretty good time with The Witcher, and I think it's because of my background. Giving you a little background on me and The Witcher, in 2019, at the time of filming, I purchased one of the latest games. Now, it's a 2015 game that I purchased in 2019, tried to play it. Graphically, it just wasn't there for me. It was a cool story, but I didn't feel the mechanics of the game, didn't necessarily enjoy it. But I did so much research as far as getting into the backstory of the games that I thought I had to play the games to understand the series. And you actually don't. If you do play the games and you do watch the series, you'll see a lot of connection and you'll enjoy it, but you don't necessarily have to play one to enjoy the other. So I played a little bit of The Witcher, got a feel for who Geralt is and how his character works, and I kind of gave it up pretty quick, and I said I'll just wait for the Netflix show to drop. And when it did, I was pretty excited about checking it out because I had heard so much of the backstory. So when speaking about the show, I mentioned a character by the name of Geralt. Geralt is the main protagonist in the games. He's actually more of a side character in the Witcher books that the games are based on, and he's a part of a trio of characters in the series. Geralt is played by Henry Cavill, who is an immaculate actor. I love him in everything he does. He did Superman, and it was great. He did Mission Impossible. It was great. Here he's playing Geralt of Rivia, the main character. I know from the books he is the nickname the Butcher of Blaviken. That's his nickname. And you get to see that develop in the Witcher series in the first episode. His commitment, Henry Cavill's commitment to the character is so great. You could see that if you ever play the games, you hear the voice of Geralt in the games. Henry Cavill nails it in this series. His commitment to the swordplay, the fact that in the first episode where swordplay was kind of the most prominent, and then later on in the series you see it, but not necessarily from him all the time. His first sword fight in the first episode was very well done, and you can clearly see it's no stunt double, it's Henry Cavill doing all this work. Excuse me. You also see that he embodies the character of Geralt very well, because Geralt is a man of a few words, but Henry Cavill is still able to project emotion with his facial expressions, with his breathing, just his eyes. He does have contacts in, not much prosthetics, but he does have quite a bit going on in the face throughout his filming of the episodes, and you get to see his frustration. You get to see his sorrow when he makes a decision that he regrets. So hats off to Henry Cavill. Great acting throughout the series. I'm gonna mess up the actress's name, but I wrote it down here. Anya Charlotra. I don't know, Anya Charlotra, but I'm gonna just say Anya, who plays the other adult lead character of Yennefer of Vandenberg. So in the games, the character of Yennefer has no backstory, but the writers here chose to give her a full backstory, which is actually quite good. They made her to be very sympathetic in the beginning, and you could tell from her first appearance that she's going to be a character that you're going to cheer for. And for the first 3 episodes, I was very much into her story. You see her basically go from rags to riches within the first 3 episodes. Then again, the writing is pretty dynamic on the show. I think it's very good. They go from a sympathetic character to someone who's more driven and on a mission to get something that was lost and willing to do anything to get it. And then by the time you get to the end of the season with Yennefer, at least, you could tell she's turned again and kind of coming back to doing the right thing and standing for a cause. And she goes on a quick 8-episode journey, and I really like where it went with her character. I think that she did a great performance as an actress, and there's nothing bad to say about her. The third of the 3 main characters would be, and forgive me, I didn't look up the actress's name, but a young girl who plays a character named Circe. And Circe is pretty much on the run throughout the season. She does a great job. She doesn't, child acting here does not fail you in this case. I was kind of disappointed by some of the other characters they put around her. Not really the acting performance, but just some of the choices that they made. I think keeping certain characters around would have made like a more diverse cast, but nevertheless, they chose to do what they did, and I'm fine with it. But her story is kind of basically on the run, and it plays out through all the season, and then it kind of puts a bow on it toward the end of the season, and I thought it was a good addition to everything that's going on. But overall, I have to say, technically, I like the soundtrack, I like the score, the special effects looked very nice, the creatures very nice, nothing to complain about. It's a high budget Netflix production, you would expect nothing less than that. Overall, I have to say, very good series. My only negative about The Witcher is its use of time. Well, backtrack. My only technical negative is its use of time. So the problem with the show is, I think you get to like episode 4, and then it's made abundantly clear to you in episode 4 that you're not looking at a straight story. Up until that point, they were dropping hints that time was passing, but I don't feel like it was very well conveyed on the screen, and there's 2 reasons why. So when you look at the character of Geralt, he is a witcher. Now, he's not an actual witch. A witcher in this world is a monster hunter. So he hunts creatures, and he's basically a bounty hunter. People pay him, he comes in, he gets rid of a creature that's terrorizing a town, he moves on to the next town. But because of certain things that were done to him, and they don't get into this much until the very end of the season, and they still don't touch it much. But because of certain things that were done to him, he doesn't age like other people does. He doesn't experience trauma and scar up the way other people do. Like, he heals differently, and so he's not normal. Yennefer, that character, is also a mage, which is basically a witch. So she's born a certain way, and she's like naturally magic, I guess, and she undergoes some type of transformation which give her what she called beauty that never fades. So she looks the same. One thing that I remarked about is that after undergoing her transformation, the next episode she says, I've been doing this for 30 years and I've got nothing for it, or something along those lines. And I thought to myself, 30 years? Like, last episode, in the last few episodes, you were struggling to do magic and struggling to get this position. You undergo your transformation, and now you've been doing it for 30 years. It just seemed off. And there was a few other times in the earlier episodes where they talk about like, oh, I've been here for weeks, and then something happens and you can kind of tell she's advancing in her studies, but it's also like, how much time is passing? Geralt has a human companion, through a portion of the season, and he's a human, and he also does not age. So I'm like, what are we looking? What are we looking at? What's the like time? What are y'all doing with it? Maybe I wasn't paying attention. Maybe I missed some things, but I went back and I sped through a few episodes, and I just didn't see any kind of indication that time was passing very well. So if there's one criticism, I think that's pretty small as far as like watching the show and enjoying it. That would be my only negative as far as the technical side. Great acting, great performances, great special effects, great action choreography as far as the sword fights and the monster fights. The only problem would be your use of time when it comes to the show. You might get thrown off by that. On the Christian worldview side, I have to say I cannot recommend this show. It pains me because I liked all the stuff that I liked. But the things that stood out that were negative, it was pretty bad. So let's get into the Christian worldview and my negatives there, and why I say I cannot recommend this show to people who have any kind of faith walk. So coming into it, within the first 2 minutes, it's gore, it's horrific. Not saying that that's a bad thing as far as the Christian worldview side, but when you talk about family friendliness, I would definitely not have this show on the TV while my 2 little girls were up and awake. It starts off with a monster fight. Cool for adults, great for adults, and not so much for kids. Its swordplay is that old school style warfare. So when they get to fighting in the battle scenes, because there's quite a few of those too, you'll see people get really maimed up and blood and splashing. That's rough. I think adults can handle that. That's not my big negative, or that's not the big thing that I have a problem with from the Christian worldview perspective. Just know, if you're going to watch the show anyway, that blood and guts and gore and stuff, that's going to be there. My real problem from a Christian perspective is the demonic looking magic at times. And I know anything where there's make-believe, we know it's make-believe, but spiritually, you just don't want to have someone on the TV topless, convulsing with their eyes rolling back and changing colors, and wind swirling and windows breaking. Like, you don't want that on the TV in your house. I know I don't want it on the TV in my house, and I can't imagine too many other people I know who would want that on the screen. When I got to that episode, I was like, man, that along with the next point that I'm about to make, I was like, this demonic stuff, it only existed really in like 1 or 2 places. But the 1 or 2 places where it existed, I was like, man, I think that's a bit much for people. Moving on to Christian worldview point 3, that is the worst, and I'm actually make a whole nother video talking about improper use and what I deem to be proper use of nudity or sex scenes in a show. So in The Witcher, it's just too much. It's just too much. I think about the 2 things that bother me about it is not necessarily like, oh, I'm so weak, I can't see no nakedness. Is it'll cause me to stumble. I'm not saying that. What I am saying is, I think about the integrity of an actress. The fact that sometimes you got to use body doubles because people don't want to be that nude in front of other people. It's like, if you got to do all that, maybe we shouldn't shoot it this way. That's 1. 2, I think about it as a producer, and like, are we alienating viewers by having this? So I told you that the show comes from books, but the books were made into very, very popular video games. If you got a young man who's, let's say he played this when it first came out in 2015, he played it at 12 years old. You add 4 years to that, he's 16. Maybe he don't have full access to everything like he want to have access to, and maybe he can't watch this show and enjoy this show because in the opening episode there's full frontal nudity for absolutely no reason, like serves no purpose. Again, I don't want to make myself seem like I'm one of those Christians who like, oh, if it got this bad, we can't watch it. No, I can accept things and I can deem things acceptable if they serve a purpose. But too many scenes in The Witcher that had either full frontal nudity or breast out served no purpose for moving the story along. So that's why I deem that unacceptable. Just something I can't say, yeah, you should watch it. Just can't say that. I will say though, if you're a person who single and you don't feel like you're easily influenced and you don't care about the Christian perspective, The Witcher is great. But if you care about what you consume and you're trying to guard your heart, I would say The Witcher may not be the one for you. I have a lot more to say about that topic. I will do a separate video talking about the proper and improper use of the nudity. But for right now, I'll cut it off here. Remember, great show, but may not be for everyone because of some of those things that exist. And I'll deep dive into those things later. Enjoy yourself in all that you do, but still remember to guard your heart. And I'll hope to see y'all guys on the next one when I break that stuff down.